Ethan sees it all. Welcome to episode 7 of Ethan Sees All. If you enjoy your stay, please be sure to leave a kind review on Yodel. There's no website. You simply open a window and bellow your adulations into the night. We're listening, and we appreciate it. Enjoy! Childhood is a truly wondrous time, fraught with mystery and adventure at every turn. Through the eyes of the untainted, every tree branch is an enchanted staff, each glass marble an eyeball plucked from the socket of some unfortunate wizard. As experiences go, it is lightning in a bottle. Once released, the violent ether can never be recaptured. Oh, but we try. With our creams that claim to wind back the years, with the expensive toys we lavish upon ourselves, with our juvenile, impulsive decision-making, we try. And I've no immunity to that nostalgia for youth. So, whenever Beatrice, the sheriff's deputy and my neighbor, rings me to babysit her sons on the rare evening her patrol runs late, I'm always happy to oblige. Spending time with kids is like opening a brief window back into their chaotic and bemusing and incredible world. I remember my own tumult of a pre-adolescence, wading through wheat stalks twice my height, wandering farther out from the homestead, and stubbornly losing my way, yet enjoying every moment. My job, thankfully, is far less stressful than caring for a juvenile me would be. For that matter, it isn't really babysitting at all. Sure, the boys are young enough to still need a babysitter, but anyone who spent more than 10 seconds with them knows they're more self-sufficient than most heads of state. Beatrice hires me to placate the band of roving mothers, known only as the helicopters. They travel in a pack, leaving citations and sternly worded reprimands in cutesy fonts, but no one ever sees them come or go. Per usual, I arrive at 6 and rap a drum solo at the door. There's a shuffling from inside, and when the door swings open, I'm greeted with a pair of identical toothy smiles. Identical, that is, except for the missing front incisors they both sport.
"Hey, Ethan,"
they say, grasping either side of me in a hug and bounding back into the apartment in a flash. "Hey, Otto! Hey, Letty!" I call out as I enter and pull the door closed. In children, a rambunctious energy is to be expected. But the boys go beyond directionless excitement, channeling the vigor of youth into whatever temporary fancy has grabbed their focus. One afternoon, they read up on the stock exchange, bought shares in a small insurance company, and after a week of sharp rise and fall, became majority shareholders. When boredom set in, they sold their stock for 100 times what they'd spent, and at their mother's urging, put it away for a college fund, leaving a boardroom of leaderless executives scratching their balding heads for months. Once the deadbolt is latched into place, I survey the room, and it seems that the boys have disappeared. The apartment, laid out much differently than my own, opens into a living room/kitchenette combo, the latter separated off to the right by a marble-topped island bar. Even the carpeting is nicer, a pleasant peach to my baby barf green. Stepping into the living room proper, the shuffling I heard earlier resumes. With keen ears, I trace the source to the maroon couch, discolored and splotchy with age. There's no one sitting on it, but as I approach, 2 mops of dark hair float into view. I walk around the couch, around the end table crowded to fullness with framed photos of the small family, and spot the boys, sitting cross-legged against the sofa back in intense silence, shrewdly regarding the cards in their hands, and once in a while tossing an illustrated monster onto the growing pile between them. The exchange is wordless. Without their dental identifiers showing, I can't tell them apart. Even for twins, the boys are remarkably similar. One gets the feeling that were they left alone, they wouldn't need to speak aloud, and that they only do so for the benefit of those present. I let them complete the round, as far as I understand a round to work in this convoluted card game of hobgoblins and trollhounds, before I fit my Babysitter's Club cap staunchly into place. Ahem, I cough. The boys, concentration broken, look up to me as though surprised I haven't evaporated. Your mom said, and I quote,
Make sure Otter and Piglet finish up their science fair project instead of wasting the night playing Dimensions of Doom.
End quote, I say, bowing.
Is that how you think our mom sounds?
Asks Letty with a laugh. Doesn't she?
I wish she wouldn't call us that. We're not little kids anymore.
Otto says in a huff.
Yeah, we're not 10.
Letty agrees.
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me. Happy belated birthday, boys. How old does that make you this year?
11.
They exclaim proudly. From my jacket pocket, I retrieve 2 lengths of steel, each forked at its end. I hope you don't think I came empty-handed. The 2 go bug-eyed as they take their gifts, at once gripping the tines and stumbling about the room, eyes tightly clenched. Otto, still meandering, says,
Is this what I think it is?
Yep, they're dowsing rods. Carry those puppies around town and who knows what you'll find. Hidden quarries.
Buried treasure.
Letty shouts.
Buried pirates.
Otto assists. Now, boys, let's think practically here. The treasure is probably buried with the pirates. The twins nod gravely, as though this were a foregone conclusion. While Otto and Letty test out their new toys, arms thrusting this way and that as they hone in on unseen wavelengths, I think back to the instructions Beatrice relayed over her rushed phone call. I need to reheat a pre-cooked dinner and water a potted spider plant by the windowsill. That much I remember. But the final part of the message was jumbled in the hurry. About that science project, I start, interrupting their fun. I'm sure I misunderstood over the phone, but your mom said something about a planetary model made of crumbs?
Gum.
They correct me. Oh, okay. That's much worse, I say, suddenly wishing I'd misheard correctly. Where'd you even get a Milky Way's worth of gum?
You know how our mom's been trying to quit smoking?
Otto begins. I can already feel my stomach reeling when I say, uh-huh. Now that he mentions it, they don't call her Smokestack Sally much around the Snake Boot anymore, which is a bit of a shame because, as mocking nicknames go, it's a pretty badass one.
Well, she's our main supplier,
says Piglet.
The rings were the hardest part to mold.
Otter hands me an empty packet of their building material, adorned with an electric green logo, busy in sharp angles and bold lines. It reads, Vice Gum, but it shouts, hella edgy.
She really likes the minty mouth punch flavor,
Letty adds, helpfully. Like a fisherman brought face to face with a creature from the briny deep, I am equal parts horrified and intrigued. In defiance of myself, I speak up. This I have got to see. The twins, muttering excitedly to themselves, lead me to their shared bedroom, directly across the hall from their mothers. Were it not for the bunk bed propped against the far wall, it'd be tough to tell the room belongs to two people. One chest of drawers, a lone chair rolled beneath a long desk, cluttered with nuts, bolts, and miscellaneous tools, and resting here and there across the room, a plethora of puzzle cubes, brain exercise games, and sci-fi lad digests the boys appear to use communally. The piece de resistance, however, hangs above us, rotating in undisturbed leisure. Whatever preconceived notions I might have harbored are dashed as I gawk up at what could be reasonably deemed a bite-sized planetarium. Suspended from a marionette control bar, augmented to suit hundreds of tethers, our solar system, down to Jupiter's smallest moon, provides a veritable feast of color and motion for the eyes. Orbits whirl independently by the dozen against a draping of navy blue silk. Judging by the ear-to-ear grins overtaking the boys' faces, they're proud of their handiwork, and it's easy to see why. "You've got this competition in the bag," I tell them, admiring the level of detail in Mars's dusty red craters and its deserted highways of desiccated riverbeds. I sort of feel bad for your classmates.
"We've still got a few minor adjustments to make,"
says Letty, ignoring that last bit.
"Screws to tighten,"
says Otto.
"Trajectories to recalibrate. And finally..."
In unison, they slyly mumble,
"Vulpecula!"
I look back and forth to the twins, awaiting an explanation, but unanswered, finally ask, "Vulpecula?"
"It's a constellation. We're painting it along the backdrop. To tease our mom."
To tease her? How?
"She hates foxes."
What? But before I can receive a reply, the boys have already jetted from the room and are rustling around in a hall closet. I can hear a tin bucket overturning and the clacking of wooden handles, maybe brooms. When they return, Otto has, tucked under his arm, what looks like a ladder made for the cutest construction crew in Candyland. It has as many steps as a normal ladder, only shrunken to befit a child, each rung a different bright primary color.
"That's about 6 hours of continued use. The motor's holding up, but we should give it a break before further tests,"
Letty says, hopping onto the bottom bunk and pressing a button on a stopwatch. Otto nods as he flips out the ladder and begins to ascend. Around and around the mobile swings, whipping up a breeze with each revolution. As it spins, Otto's eyes focus with hawk-like intensity for an opening. He bites his tongue, one arm rising to the ready. A droplet of sweat rolls down his cheek. Letty offers silent encouragement. And off his hand flies, through Saturn's moons, ducking under a meteor shower of rock candy, paying its toll at the Galactic Federal Checkpoint, very nearly being tangled in a shredded tin can fashioned to resemble a black hole. But as his hand reaches the switch, positioned precariously above a lumpy, slightly moist rendition of our mother sun, we three all cheer a silent hurrah. It is a short-lived hurrah. More a whoo. Because with the click that follows, the mobile does appear to slow. But it's a feint, and almost in an instant it revs with gusto into a mad frenzy. A blurry universe. The trauma in the moments to come is so great, I only remember it in bits and pieces. Something in the way his little plastic ladder tottered to and fro should have been a portent of the disaster to ensue. Maybe it was an alignment of the planets. Maybe it was a lone, spearmint-flavored planet on a collision course with my beautiful coiffure. I've never been much into astronomy, but this was not an accurate demonstration of orbital mechanics. The snap of twine as the rogue gumball decided to break up the band and pursue solo ventures was audible. But by then it's too late, and it's airborne, and there's only time enough to think of ducking. Like a heat-seeking missile, it hurtled my way. And then it was all over. For the boys' part, they apologized profusely afterwards, one muttering he needs to calibrate the gyrator's axle or something to that effect. They painstakingly salvage what they can of their science project from what this morning was well-manicured topiary, and is now a sticky tangle of wine-red thatch and the blue of Neptune's gaseous surface. It would be a cool art fixture if it wasn't, all up in my grout. I don't hold it against them because, hey, they're nice kids. They didn't do it on purpose. Also, their mom has a gun, so... But de-gunkifying my do will take some assistance. Like a finely tuned automobile, a portrait of historic note, or a freshly sired newborn, you'd scarcely want just any old grubby mitts under the hood if anything goes awry. And the craft scissors the landlord uses for scrapbooking do not make the cut, much to his dismay. Pamplemousse thinks my hair is funky fresh. I can't remind him of Pamplemousse's horrid eyesight, on account of being a tegu. This is a 2-hour debate I refuse to take part in, again. So I starve the air of my diatribe and make my exit. My upstairs neighbor, Domino, typically separated by a reinforced cardboard ceiling, swears he has the perfect solution for getting gum out of hair. An old remedy passed down through the generations. A cocktail of wormwood, fermented peanut butter, 1 garlic clove, whole, tomato paste, a pinch of ground oleander, and cinnamon to taste. For some reason, maybe due to panicked hysteria, I don't question why the taste of a concoction meant for my head should matter. Not until it's too late, and Domino, as eager as a golden retriever, is half shoving a tall glass of a murky, lagoon-colored sludge in my face. Desperation clouds my better judgment. I plug my nose, grab the gruel, and take a gulp. What was meant to be only a mouthful builds, like a non-Newtonian liquid, into a steady rush. A waterfall unfettered and crashing as heavy as lead to the pits of my stomach. Delicious, I manage, through gritted teeth. You can really taste the cinnamon. Domino fans away my breath. You can really smell the garlic. Needless to say, though I'm gonna say it anyway, this does not resolve my situation. In this time of great follicular need, there's only one person I can now trust to return my hair to its former glory. Rather, there's but one person with the credentials. Aloof, and not without his fair share of appearances in the local rumor mill, Cornelius Bogg has shorn more locks, uprooted more teeth, and tamed more ungovernable patches of scruffy facial hair than any one man should feel comfortable admitting to. One of those rumors pertains to him collecting the discarded teeth and tethering them into rosary. Personally, I think that's horseradish. Everyone knows an effective set of prayer beads must all fall from the same mouth. Preferably a heretic's. Pinpointing the barber's base of operations is no great ordeal for anyone with at least one working eye. Were one to crest wherever's steepest elevation, somewhere in the mountainous ridges beyond the forest, and peer out over the vastness, they'd be greeted with an almost unbroken chain of short, single-story buildings, with the bumps of domed rooftops and the infrequent garret or attic jutting up like exposed gophers. Of these architectural outliers, the long, thin structure, laid in red brick and doubling as Bog's hearth, is the most striking. A huge, swollen thumb in the city's fist. Perhaps to complement the building's own staggering height, or perhaps because there was just a very good sale at the Barber Emporium that day, the candy-striped pole mounted beside the entry doorway and twirling with merry abandon is several times larger than is probably lawfully permissible. Even without the added benefit of a falcon's vantage point, the place is easy to spot, and with its location near the middle of wherever, easy to reach. I walk ever toward the town's center, yanking globs of muck from my head all the way. As I pull and twist, I mull over reconsidering my babysitting rates. When finally, the brick monolith rises up before me, it takes some serious neck craning to behold the whole of the beast. And even then, the barber's pole seems to conspire in the illusion that the building stretches on without end. The moment I set foot past the threshold, and for a reason I can't coax into words, I feel 1,000 twitching eyes leering through my skull. As quickly as the sensation arises, it subsides. But once the good barber is fully in view, my earlier reaction feels vaguely prescient. In fact, it takes a good long while to observe the man in his entirety. He is ludicrously tall, with a noticeable hunch in his back, no doubt from years of bending over to accommodate his miniature clientele. And knowing I'd be no different, I feel instant guilt. But the way he looms over a person, blocking the fluorescent lighting and casting ominous shadows all the way to the doorframe, makes you command your muscles to keep your skin attached. Though now the unusually high roof makes a little more sense. Getting my wits about me, I rock my head backward to meet the giant's gaze and say, in a voice more meager than I'd intended, "Yes, good afternoon, sir. I'm in dire need of your services. My hair and I have been victim to a freak accident, a disaster of cosmic proportion." In explanation, I knead through the gluey mess, revealing the horror to him in much the same way a patient unbandages for his physician a festering laceration. And in silence, Bog regards my mangled mane. Slowly, Bog begins. "It's very... Yeah, gross, I know. I removed what I could without destroying it any further, but it needs a master's touch." "Red," he finishes, his tone perfectly flat and unreadable. I guess. So what do you say? Is it a lost cause? Should I resign to a life of obligate baldness? I hear the monk look is very in with certain crowds. With monks, specifically. Upon a wordless gesture, Bog turns his lanky figure aside, giving me clear view of the sparsely furnished room. The walls hold no pictures, no memorabilia. The stale stench of hair cuts through that other lingering fragrance, the smell of solitude. There aren't even seats along the walls for waiting, though if I had to guess, this place never gets exactly crowded. It's a wonder why, with such a personable owner. Bolted to the floor and facing a vanity mirror mounted to the room's westerly wall is an isolated barber's chair, the only one in sight. Its cushioning shines a rosy enamel red, glinting off of the polished steel ring beneath it. Bog motions absently toward the throne, and, taking it as tacit agreement, I edge past him and plop down with a small hiss of foam. I'm about to commence with the small talk, the usual. Where are you from? How are things going? Had any revelatory hallucinations recently? When the chair lurches abruptly backward, wrenching me along with it. Something grabs at my scalp. I can't see anything save for the distant ceiling above, so faint sloshing is all the warning I'm afforded before my head is submerged. Partially submerged, anyway. I mean, really, a little verbal heads up would have been nice. Not everyone is so used to being manhandled into a shampooing. As cool water from the mobile sink sluices over my hair, I bid myself relax. Any reservations I may or may not have had upon entering circle the drain, accompanied by the lather from a second rigorous cleansing. Between the two, a soak in an oatmeal, lavender oil, and pomegranate paste that strips any residue of Neptune still clinging for dear life. The man, for all his ungainliness, has a harpist's fingers. Before long, I'm putty in his hands. His deep humming that rumbles through the barber's chair and up each vertebrae is a fine counterpoint to the sharp, metallic slice of scissor blades, meeting and parting, meeting and parting. His dainty catcher's mitt of a hand, and the shears by extension, are gravitating just over a promontory of a cowlick, when a groan breaks his song. We both glance around for the escaped lion that surely produced such a quaking roar, only for our eyes to fall to my stomach, which seems to, in response, gurgle another sad refrain.
What have you done to me?
It pleads. With the unfiltered verve that only embarrassment lends, I blurt out, I drank my neighbor's special herb-infused sewage bile. I think I might be dying. Might you have a bathroom here? My arms are crossed over my midsection in a vain attempt to muffle my innards and their swan song. He is visibly unnerved by this request, perhaps not expecting me to be so forthcoming about my bodily functions, but I don't pussyfoot around when it comes to matters of the heart or of the lower intestines. Hesitantly, like I've just asked for the location of his mother's grave and how solid the ground is for tap dancing, he leads me, eyes darting between the floor and my person, through a door at the rear of the shop. It opens into a dank passageway. A lengthy stretch, unlit by anything but a few oil-fueled lamps, hanging at 30-foot intervals, their support ropes dangling loosely between them. At his behest, we head down. This is not the hallway to a restroom, I think to myself in the interminable descent, but to a torture dungeon, where the idea of torture involves nipple clamps and car batteries. The walls aren't walls at all, really, but dense earth packed into perfect roundness, like a burrow bored by some giant mole. Suddenly, my every muscle is clenched tight. Perhaps noting a change in the briskness of my steps, or running a usual line, He speaks up. Renovations. I nod. Finally, after traveling a long, winding loop down for what feels like miles, we come to a powder blue door, painted with the half-skirted stickman that invites all and turns away none. In this moment, the unisex pictogram is my savior. My gratitude must be palpable as I fling open the door and throw myself into the lavatory. When the latch slides into the locked position, I can hear Boggs' heavy, departing footsteps. It takes a few seconds for my eyes to adjust to the blue-white fluorescent lighting, but as they do, the picture of normalcy unfolds before me. A gray-veined marble countertop, inset with a chrome sink, an automatic soap dispenser, and one of those turbo wind tunnels that never gets your hands quite dry. If anything, with the dish of potpourri gracing the toilet tank, it is too nice a John. Even the floor here is tiled where the corridor wasn't. Though for all its amenities, everything is just a little too large. Nevertheless, after summiting a toilet bowl fit for a mastodon, I let myself be taken in by hygienic luxury. Admittedly disappointed that there's no one in an apron to offer me a steaming towel when the deed is done. But drafting a suggestion letter will need to wait. For far off, underneath my feet, there comes a low, nearly undetectable thrumming. I'm just admiring the potpourri's sweetly tropical notes when, mid-sniff, the sound gives me pause. I listen intently. Surely enough, there's yet another echoic grumbling. Okay, that's not my stomach, I assure the automated gizmos. The hand soap squirter whirs incredulously. I crack the door slowly and lean my head out, focusing for a minute or two in either direction, but the sound has disappeared, along with any hint of Barber Bog. Back in the bathroom, however, distant rumbling rises from the ground still. The way I see it, I've got two options. One, discover the source of the mysterious disturbance. Or, two, ignore it and live out the remainder of my days convinced the barber's commode is a direct access portal to Hades. I'll let you guess which one I chose. The crunch of dirt underfoot seems to amplify in time with my quickening pulse, both ringing in my head as I descend lower and deeper. The spirals coil so tightly that I'm likely still beneath the barbershop's perimeter, though burrowed as far underground as the building extends into the air, and possibly farther. My ears pop from the pressure. A few more minutes of walking, and I'm beginning to believe this passage has no end, that I've been doomed to wander this claustrophobic snakeskin for eternity. It would be only just punishment after all those extra free samples I've nabbed from Stuff-A-Plenty over the years. My final will and testament is coming together nicely when I notice the rocky corridor begin to fan out. The string of lanterns illuminating the way dies off suddenly, but pure darkness is abated by a few thin shafts of yellow light running along the ground ahead. Like a moth, I follow. By now, those muffled sounds I heard above have crystallized into agonizing groans. The spiraling tunnel and the guiding columns of luminescence cease in tandem as I find myself staring up at a monstrous iron-wrought door, slotted halfway up with a vent that ekes out the glow from within. While wide enough to let bits of light pass, the interstices are too slim to see through. I'll need to open the door. In the dimness, the handle is but a silhouette. As I wrap nervous fingers around the curved rudimentary bar, a chill races through me. Bracing myself for whatever lies on the other side, I pull. True to its visible heft, the door does not give silently. Beneath the metal behemoth, hinges creaking a foul shriek into the expanse behind me, caked earth is ground to dust. Once more, I blink until the harsh contrast of light heaving through the doorway levels, and the room, rather the bunker, materializes before me. A chemical astringency hits my nose right off, calling to mind a hospice, the sweetness of waning mortality. I tiptoe delicately inside, hoping beyond reason that it might cancel out the earlier cacophony. Dragging the door closed again is no quieter in effort. To my relief and morbid disappointment, there is precious little to suggest any illicit operations of the fun, licentious variety have endeavored here. There is precious little at all. And what does inhabit the chamber, from the wall-hugging desks at either end to the scattered carts set with rusting wheels, is overlaid in sheets, every surface jaundiced with dust. What strikes me in particular about the room, though, are two severe slabs of roughly hewn granite, lying in parallel at the epicenter, and radiating in the blinding glare of a pair of floodlights. On the granite block to the right, a sheet drapes evenly, like dining table dressing, across its rectangular top. But beneath the yellowed canvas disguising the slab to its left, shapes contort into the effect of an unruly carnival tent. I'm unsure what to make of it. It is toward one of the cluttered tables along the outer wall that I begin to take a few tepid steps when, like clockwork, the grumbling rings out. Only now, with so little to disrupt the path of sound, it becomes startlingly obvious from whence it originates. Head leads body in a creeping arc as my sights fall upon the bulging sheet. Silence again pervades the air. From where I stand, looking on through squinted eyes, the obscured hills gracing the heft of rock are motionless. So I ease closer. A sweat bead glances from forehead to chin as I take terse notice of the three-legged floodlights and their overbearing heat. It is almost enough to distract me from the thick leather strap, only just slightly visible beneath the tilted hunk of granite, which, as I approach, favors more and more a crude operating table. There it is, unfailingly. Tired and laced with anguish, the groan ruffles the sheets in a soft fluttering, dust motes ride the stale subterranean drafts. Somewhere, beneath the sterility of a makeshift hospital ward, soil and decay provide a tangy undercurrent, as well as a familiar scent I can't quite place. And then, I'm upon the operating table, planted close enough to get a good look, yet far enough away that, were, say, a cursed statue to regain consciousness, I'd have ample time to react. One must plan for such contingencies. It is only an arm's length away, but in my unsureness, the distance feels a chasm, as my hand reaches, like a cat sizing up a gap between two countertops, with measured rigidity to the soiled sheet. Blood pounds in my head from the long while spent below ground level. When my fingers have taken a tenuous hold of a snatch of fabric, my heartbeat drums up in synchronicity, creating a rhythmic internal clangor. Thunk, thunk, thunk. I force myself to swallow a deep breath and wait for my pulse to slow, the bit of sheet still clenched in my fist. It helps to calm me, but that calm is quickly snuffed by my realization that the pounding hasn't stopped. In fact, it's growing louder. By the time I recognize them as footfalls, the considerably large door, built for a considerably large man, begins to perform its signature creaking dirge. I search frantically for a spot to hide in this room devoid of any nooks or crannies. In my lapsed composure, a leg collides with one of the covered carts, sending it crashing to the dirt floor. Among the spilled contents are surgical tools, scalpels, handsaws, instruments for rending the flesh and mending bone, and curiously, a bottle of a thick blue-green liquid, some of which oozes and mixes with loose sediment. Suddenly, with nowhere to run and evidence of my trespassing currently strewn about the ground, panic sets in. It doesn't have long to get comfortable, though, because as Cornelius Bog towers at the doorway, my only exit, a dozen other emotions are struggling for supremacy. For what feels like eons, we only look at one another. The culmination of his sharp features resembles a mask, at once expressionless and quizzical. It is then, when studying his face for some sign of derision, that my eyes tick upward to a spot above the door frame. Snug beneath a plate of glass, white with floodlight glare, lies a photograph. In it, two figures sit poised. A portrait. A slew of apologies are forming in the back of my throat, but all that manages to escape is a long, What can I say, really? Sorry I stumbled upon your very unsexy dungeon. Won't happen again. Killer haircut, by the way. No time to get the wording right, though. Bog bounds forward. In strides wider than most men are tall, he bridges the gap between us. His face bears the same ghostly pallor as the barber's smock tied about his waist, and under the unforgiving light, shadows carve cruel angles into sunken cheekbones. In haste, I've armed myself with a chisel from the overturned cart, and the rubber grip is a greased pig in my sweat-drenched palms as I wield it shakily before me. Closer he stomps, and I've graduated into full-blown, eyes-closed chisel flailing, slashing at the air with erratic strikes. If my heartbeat wasn't rattling like a tin can before, it is certainly causing a racket in my ears now. It is only when the steps have altogether ceased that I inch open one pinched lid and let my desperate arm waving falter. Through a dusting of lashes, I see Bog, not crooked over me like a dead oak as I anticipated, but kneeling beside the occupied operating table, tending to it. "He didn't hurt you, did he?" "Hey," I say, definitely not offended. I watch as he peels back the old sheet. I watch what lies beneath. And though my eyes are watching, my brain is doing very little comprehending. There is an uncanniness about the shape of the body, even human in some respects. Legs where legs should be, and arms jutting from shoulders as arms ought to. But there is nothing quite human about the tufts, bundles, and coiled ringlets of hair that line, no, comprise its physical form. Nothing human about the size. From head to shaggy toe, patches as though shorn from 100 unique sources and adeptly sewn together, give the creature a quilted appearance. But that, somehow, isn't the most alarming part. A golem made of hair, sure. It's not the ickiest component material ever proposed. That prize belongs to the twins. What sends icy tendrils slithering down my back are the fiery shades burning brightly in each bordered-off segment. Auburns, coppers, strawberry blondes, smoky burgundies, all stitched into a motley of red. Red. Against myself, my eyes flit back up to the entrance, to the portrait at its crest. The photo is badly faded, but even through the gauze of time, the barber's slant face betrays no inner workings. And beside him, a woman with a cascade of ginger curls draping her shoulders. A smile tugs at the edges of her weary mouth. Keeping a laser focus on the good barber and the blazing furball, I crouch down and let the chisel roll from my hand. "Your wife," I say, more than ask. "My Marguerite," he confirms, combing his fingers through a silken lock. The creature, Marguerite, whines a pitiful grumble. Where her mouth might be, a coarse bramble of hair sputters. It is staring at this vibrating mound that draws me to note the whole. At the apex of her featureless head, like she'd been brained with a wrecking ball, the equivalent of her frontal lobe is missing. A gaping concave void in a clay planet. "Where'd you get the mojo to make a golem?" I ask, resting back on my haunches. I think I see a wistful look cross his face for a moment, and he says,
Margie dabbled in the occult. I never had a taste for it, but once she took ill...
You took an interest. He nods. When allopathic medicine couldn't heal Marguerite's broken body, they began to seek alternative treatments. No shaman or bog hag in wherever was unfamiliar with their faces by the end. But even magic, it would seem, comes with its limitations. Love, on the other hand, has none. With their avenues in this life exhausted, they looked to the next. All of this I parse from a tight-lipped recounting by Bog, who very clearly needs to expand his range of conversation partners beyond the people living in, and beneath, his shop. And the dent? I ask, swirling a finger in circles around my temple. In soft tones, he confides,
We don't receive many redheads.
I try to appear shocked. Looking between the two, from the massive doting barber to his wifely abomination, a pang of sympathy guts me like a fish. Aw, that's sad. And a little bit gross, but sweet. And look, I'm not one for standing in the way of love, regardless of the many splendored and horrifying forms it takes. So, in the name of love, you can take like the third most part of my hair.
Do you really mean it?
And disbelief, or something as close to disbelief as that craggy face can muster, flashes briefly across his eyes. Yes, I really give you permission to use my hair to reconstruct your dead wife. That is a thing I just said. Is there anything I need to sign?
No. Verbal contracts are binding in this county.
Okay, well, that's an issue I'll need to take up with the mayor, but not today. Hand me those garden shears. And that's the story of how I donated hair for a good cause. Ah, all's well that split ends well. But you know what I always say. If I can help just one monster feel a sense of renewed confidence, it's worth every strand. Monsters are people too, after all. Slimy, dripping, fanged people, but people nonetheless. This seems like as good a time as any to test out Hug a Hobgoblin Day with the masses. Text HOB to the number being whispered to you slowly from the garbage disposal if you'd lovingly embrace a monster, no questions asked. I smell a new national holiday. Ah, but what am I telling you for? I'm sure you've got a barbershop in a town just like this one. It's all the same. Here, there, wherever. This episode brought to you by Barber Emporium. Hacha! For razor blades and more shades than one, come to the Barber Emporium.
Do 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 do.